Shane, again, speaking to you a little bit later this week, so it's kind of not as breathless as we normally do on a Monday, and there's a little bit more considered and everything like that. But, you know, we've got two brilliant semi-finals coming up now at the weekend. But, like, just looking back briefly on last weekend, you know, I think that, unfortunately, the Cork and Dublin match was, you know, there was definitely a lot to talk about, and there was some great highlights and stuff like that. But in terms of Waterford and Tip, taking your natural Tip bias out of things, and we'll definitely talk about where this leaves Tipperary, but it was a thrilling and kind of breathless match, and the kind of things that we want to see, the kind of game we want to see in knockout hurling at this time of year.
Yeah, it was phenomenal stuff, Mike, you know, and like, I suppose I think Waterford's, the scoring really says that. And talking to anyone, any of the Tip fans who were there, or, you know, talking to them since, like, I don't think there's no bad feelings towards Waterford getting the victory, and I think most hurling people will understand that overall Waterford were the better team. Now, was it a penalty? You know, we've had the chance to look at it loads of times since, and look, it wasn't a penalty, you know, in my opinion. But you know, at the time then, I think we were down by 4, and that puts us down by 7. But look, I think overall Waterford were a better team. 4-28. Waterford scored 3-25 from play, like, and I think that'll just tell you how dominant they were, really, you know. And I think Tip were trying to play catch up for the majority of the game, and it was just so thrilling, though. Like, you know, I was even talking to people about it that mightn't be huge hurling people, but were coming in, watching the game. They said, "Oh, there's 6 points in it. This is over," and they might have went out to the kitchen and came back in, and now there's only a point in it, and John McGrath gets a shot off, and Sean O'Brien makes a great save. And I think that's what hurling is like. I think that's maybe why hurling is the fastest field sport in the world, and then obviously with that might brings the excitement that we got down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Saturday. But phenomenal game of hurling. You know, a lot of the Tip boys stayed on the pitch afterwards. Whether that's a sign maybe that was maybe the last time we're going to see some of them in the blue and gold. It's hard to call those things right now. Hard for Liam Cahill as well. Like, he's a fierce, well-respected man here in Tip, Mike, what he's done with underage, what he's done down in Waterford, the culture he's created. Hard one for him, you know, that his heart will always be Tipperary, but he's the manager, he's a professional man, had a job to do, and I think he made a great statement, said, you know, he doesn't feel any taller or any bigger because he knocked Tipperary out of the championship, but he has a job to do with Waterford. And, like, in fairness, I think the lads brought it up there during the week as well. Hadn't won a game in 2 years, championship game. Now he's beaten Tipperary, you know, beaten Kilkenny, beaten Clare. You know, I think it's, you know, beaten Galway. Like, you know, he really has reinstilled confidence in the hurling down there in Waterford, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last hurdle, really, well, maybe not the last hurdle to win All Ireland but the last hurdle is to beat Limerick, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But just going back to Tip, actually, I don't want to talk about retirements too much, and we obviously talked about Joe last week and everything that happened there, and you know, we can be shooing lads out the door, as you know, instead of just enjoying them sometimes. But it's funny you say that about kind of standing on the pitch afterwards, and you would imagine for 3 or 4 of those guys, the thought definitely enters their mind. And then you go and you have a winter, and maybe you come back in January, and maybe you go at it again, maybe you don't. But there's a comment here from Chris saying felt like a lot of that Tip team won't see next season. When you retired, you called it a day in 2015. Age-wise, you probably had another couple of years. What were you, 32, 31, 32?
Yeah.
You know, some people go on longer, some don't. You're in midfield, you're using up a lot of energy. The legs might not be what they were. Did you know after Croke Park against Galway that day, and did anything change after that? Because I'd be interested in how final those thoughts can be.
Yeah, personally, I probably did. And I would have been one of the players. I actually would have stayed on, had a good look around the stadium, you know, and that the next time you might be on the pitch, you might be at a Westlife concert or something like that. Like, you know, so no, I think I knew myself. For me, it was a kind of a life decision, Mike. I suppose we'd lock it on here at home, and just wanted to be here for my wife, like, you know. And it was, you know, it was 6 times a week I was putting the gear in the bag, and you know, life took over, and I suppose I would have got married then in December 2015, and you know, I think that's what it is nowadays for people, that nobody wants to be retiring anyone, but like you do get to a certain stage, 32, 33, and you know, sports science wise, we've never been able to recover better or know how to recover better. Our managements haven't known how to manage these guys who have given maybe 10, 11, 12 years service. But I just think life takes over. And I think you get to an age of 32, 33, a lot of guys might have been involved in the panel like since they're 19 or 20. And you've missed out on maybe 10 years of the crack with your club mates. you've maybe missed out on a lot of stags, a lot of weddings, a lot of social events that you just couldn't go to because you had to understand that you have to, I won't say sacrifice because I think it's a privilege to play for your county, but you had to forego those things. And I think that's what's happening now with a lot of guys nowadays, maybe stepping away, who could have gone on another year or two in the broader public's opinion. But I think they just feel that, look, I want to build a house. I want to get married. I want to go further in my career. And they just, maybe in comparison to 20 years ago, they're just seeing that the world is a bigger place outside of hurling, for my own personal experience, I suppose I was in Alaska for the 2016 Munster Championship games, and look, nobody on the ship, the cruise ship we were on, really cared what was going on in the Munster Championship. And I suppose it's an eye opener to think that when you're in that bubble, you think that's your world, but there's a lot of people that don't really mind what's going on. But it's absolutely brilliant to be there, and I think what's the biggest compliment I can give to anyone who's an inter-county player is you are definitely a better person, sporting wise and in your own life, and you'll go further in work and everything for being involved in county panels, and because of the dedication you give. People see that you have a good work ethic, you're part of a team. And I think 99, you meet a lot of them, Mike. You talk to a lot of 99.9% of guys, inter-county guys, and the ladies side of it as well. They're absolutely brilliant people on and off the pitch as well. And I think that's a testament to the environments and the cultures they're in because of inter-county setups.
Yeah, absolutely, and the dedication and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's funny. It maybe that's where the professionalism versus amateur comes from. People sometimes find it hard to draw a line when you guys are doing so much and training so much, but maybe it is that your life is sitting there on hold. You can't kind of you're also working, you're also doing things. So, but by the time you get there, it's not a case of you have another few years in the legs. It's a case of I've done this for too long now. My life has to kind of come next. Yeah, so it's very interesting side bar to the conversation there. But on those guys, because I do want to talk about Waterford, and I'm conscious of the fact that I did this last week as well, where I started with Galway. But it's no disrespect to Waterford, I want to really get into now. But just on tip, like outside of maybe those decisions that need to be made, I thought they showed enough at the weekend in a very even game that could have went either way. Waterford were probably the better team. You mentioned that yourself. But Tip were thereabouts. Goal chance to level it in injury time. 2 points behind after 71 minutes. Stayed with them. Showed their experience, I thought, late in the game when they were kind of coming back into it. There are lads coming through. Maybe they're not being bled fast enough. But there's enough there in Tip that you wouldn't be like, it's not this kind of end of the world, let's rip it all up and start again kind of sense, is there?
No, absolutely not. There isn't, but people will be saying, oh, you should have tried this guy and you should have tried that guy, and you should be trying younger players. Like, for me, my opinion on that is, okay, there's a difference between wanting the younger players to stand up and the younger players actually standing up. Okay, you have to try them in big games, but maybe Liam just felt as the manager that the best team he had was the team he had on the pitch, and maybe someone else might think differently, that you need younger guys with the way Waterford play with energy and all this. I think foresight is great and hindsight is brilliant and everything, but it's like, how would I compare to? I suppose there'll always be very good rugby players in New Zealand, Mike, and there'll always be very good hurlers in Tipperary, and in a lot of counties the same, because hurling is number one here, for majority of the places, and any the top athletes in every parish, their first dream is play hurling or football for Tipperary, and that's why I think the talent will always be there. Do I feel the talent is there right now? Yeah, I do. But it'll be interesting to see, will these guys get that experience now next year? I suppose they really will have to know the way the game has gone. How would this Waterford team maybe have got on 5 or 6 years ago? I think the game has even changed from that. They're zippy, they're high energy, they move the ball quick through the lines. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you're talking maybe even look at the 2016 final. It was kind of maybe more intense, a bit more physical than it is now. And so look, time, the hurling is changing all the time. Right now we're in a game where you use the ball well, possession, you keep possession, you play with a high energy game, and and Waterford are really good at that. And we just weren't able to match them for that energy and moving the ball through the line the last day. But as you said, I think it'll show the experience we have, the class we had on the pitch, the top quality guys that we'll be talking about for years and years to come, that they were able to stay in a game and be thereabouts when maybe they didn't have the right to, Mike, if that makes sense. But they use the ball well. I suppose they'll look back and they'll look at the few shots they took from maybe 90, 100 yards when they could have got it into the lads as things that they could have worked on. But again, look, I think the Tipperary lads, will there be change? In my opinion, there will be some change, definitely.
Yeah.
What that will come in the form of guys stepping away or guys coming in, I suppose time will tell. We're getting going with club championship here now in Tipperary, and you'll get to see guys putting their hand up as well for a go next year, and that's what it's all about. I think Brian Cody has a great saying. It's that to be a good county hurler, you must be an outstanding club hurler, and I think that's nail on the head. You really have to be a standout player for your club to be considered for the county, and it'll be interesting to see that over the next couple of months now. Who a couple of guys put up their hand, but look, I think as you said, Mike, and you're dead right. I think kudos to Waterford here. They were the better team for the whole game, and really looking forward to going up to Croke Park to see them on Saturday and take on Limerick and see what they've learned from last year playing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we leave Tip, then, Liam Sheedy pretty well, I'd imagine. Is he the type that he's another man with a busy life outside of the game as well, like, let's not forget, but is he somebody that will want to go at it again, or and kind of like say, right, 2019 is in the past now, we've had 2 years and not win, and I need to go and do this again with them? Or will he say maybe it's time for someone else to kind of come in and give this a go now that won All Ireland and a second 3-year stint isn't the worst outcome?
I think Liam is the kind of guy that he'll think long and hard about it, and he'll do what he won't. Liam is the kind of guy that it's not what's best for him, it's what's best for the group. And that's what Liam will do. And Liam will have a good think about it, say, am I the right guy to take this group to the next level, to maybe bring in new guys, to understand that maybe some guys are going to want to step away, because they've all the boxes ticked and they're moving on with life. And Liam will have a good long think about that. And if he feels that he is the right guy to take on the group next year, I think, absolutely everyone in Tip would be absolutely delighted with it. But I think it won't be a rash decision anyway, I'll put it like that, Mike, for him or any of his management team. Like, you've Tommy there, Tommy Owen Kelly, Eamon O'Shea. Eamon is coming up and down from Galway all the time. A lot of people might realise that Eamon lives in Salt Hill near the prom, driving up and down 2, 3, 4 times a week coming up, especially when championships at his height. So there's a guy who gives so much to Tipperary and asks very, very little in return, and has done so much for so many of us and so many of the players there. So it won't be something taken lightly, but I feel the kind of guy that Liam is, just absolutely brilliant guy. And I always say it, from working with him or working around him, you're always a better person after it. So Liam will have a good think about that, to say, is he the right guy or not? And if he feels he is the right guy, well, I think, that everyone with Tip would be very, very happy to see him at the helm again next year.
Yeah. So Waterford then, maybe, Liam Cahill, let's see what happens the rest of this year. Let's see what happens with Liam Sheedy, etc. like that. But everyone's kind of painted him in as a Tipperary manager already, which, might be unfair on his relationship with this group that they have, because it is a special group as well. But when we spoke after the Clare game, we're like, oh, here we go again. Waterford, flat season, good season, flat season, good season. And what they've done to rescue it, I think they got a little bit lucky with having a couple of weeks off. I think they got a little bit lucky with the draw and playing Laois when they could have been, against maybe a better team than Laois. Maybe they could have been caught that day because they didn't play well. But since then, the 2 matches have been absolutely brilliant. You've seen it in the first kind of couple of minutes again. In the same way as we mentioned Shane Bennett's point this week, they started like a house on fire again against Tip, and you're like, Waterford are flying here. And if it wasn't for Shamey's 2 goals in a couple of minutes, they could have been nearly out of sight, So what is it that's changed about this team? Because you almost think now, as they go into the Limerick match, they're in a better position than they were going into the All-Ireland final last year against them.
I think in the form of, say, Mikey Beavens, the coach, that he would have learned so much from playing Limerick in Croke Park last year, that, I just don't understand people that say, that this pitch is the same dimensions as Croke Park, and I think it's absolute bull. I think any player will tell you Croke Park is just a different animal. It plays differently, because of the stadium and everything. It feels like a bigger pitch. It feels like there's more space when you're looking out the field to try and spray a ball into space. It plays a bigger pitch, and that's what the big stadiums do. But I suppose what you said there, Mike, is they're in a better place. That they feel like a different team. For me, they're even a different team than the first round of the championship this year against Clare. They're literally a different team. Same group, but a different team. If you think about it against Clare, I think they only had 8 from the 15 that started the All-Ireland before in 2020. They'd only 8 players out of 15 that started that All-Ireland final for starting against Clare. So, you know, no matter what team you are, like even if you were Limerick, and if Limerick get to the All-Ireland final this year, and in the first round of championship next year, you want to have 8 of those guys. It's very, very hard to, you know, to try and push on and get a victory. Like, I take it right against Clare, Mike. Billy Nolan started in goals. We see Sean O'Brien is the goalkeeper now. Okay, against Clare, Shane Fife, Conor Gleeson, and Shane McNulty were down to be the full back line. Okay, now Conor Gleeson was suspended the last day against Tip. So you only had Shane McNulty involved there. Conor Prunty is now back in full back. So that's massive for them. If you think about it, even Caleb Lyons was back corner back that day, Mark and Tony Kelly, right? Their half back line against Clare. Caleb Lyons, Irla Daly, Kevin Moore. Caleb Lyons is the only one still there. Shane Bennett was named at full forward that day. Now he's back centre back. Kieran Bennett didn't even start that day. Now he's wing back and possibly one of their best players of the championship since that day. Midfield, Ozzy Gleeson and Darragh Lyons are midfield. Neither of them are midfield now. Your midfield is now Jamie Barron and you've Peter Hogan midfield. And in the forward line then, as I said, Shane Bennett's gone back into the backs. Desi Hutchinson has been phenomenal since his work rate and everything. Jack Prendergast has given him an energy out at 11. Fagan has now gone to the wing instead of centre forward. You know, you've Stephen Bennett there on the wing forward as well. And you know, you've Neil Montgomery, Mikey Carney, these guys are all coming on, Patrick Curran. So they're a transformed team, Mike, you know, since the day against Clare. And you can see that the confidence they're playing with it more. But look, for me, one guy is key to all this. Now Prunty's back and everything. Jamie Barron. Jamie Barron is the heartbeat of the team. When Jamie Barron is hurling well, Waterford hurl well. Absolutely brilliant the last day. Absolutely brilliant the day before against Galway. Him back gets everybody else around him ticking. And it's allowing their half-back line, you know, there's so much trust there with them, you know, and they have an attacking half-back line, scored 5 points from play against Galway. Even the last day as well, Kieran Bennett driving forward with the ball. He was brilliant, you know, he's a joy to watch. But because Barron is there and knows how to play that role so well, he'll cover back, he'll cover the space, he'll be the link player, and he's an all-star form at the moment. I know you have the role in all-stars, Mike, you know, but he's for me, he's a guy that if he puts in any bit of a performance this weekend, he'll be walking up to collect another all-star award, which would be number 4 for him, I believe, at midfield, which would be phenomenal. So yeah, I think a lot of changes, but Jamie Barron, heartbeat of everything going good for him.
Mentioned even like the 3 all-stars that he has, but like it feels this year like he's in that 2017 form, which is kind of another level again that he probably hasn't reached since. So it's always good to see a kind of a hurler getting back to sort of the level that we know they can be, or probably surpassing it really if he kind of builds on this over the next game or two. I want to talk, you mentioned the goalkeeper change, and we'll talk obviously about the Tip match in a couple of minutes, but that a brilliant save from Sean O'Brien at the end of the game. And in general, like we talked about losing, we hear a lot about losing Tyke Burka for Waterford, but losing Stephen O'Keefe, one of the best goalkeepers of his generation. You think about that generation, you think of Anthony Nash, you think of Owen Murphy, obviously still knocking around, maybe Nicky Quaid, but like big boots.
Could probably join that conversation too, couldn't he? You know, and Nolan as well from Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Really good keeper, but like you think of like big boots to fill, but not even getting that kind of nod at the start, you know, kind of been brought in mid-championship. And then you see Patrick Collins obviously doing such a brilliant job for Cork as well, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. But it is good to see kind of like it's such a pressurised position. You can be waiting so long for your chance there as well. And for these guys to come in and kind of really star, and basically 2 of them having huge shays and winning All-Ireland quarterfinals for their county. It's really brilliant to see, especially replacing such 2 huge figures in Socky and in Nash as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I suppose if we take Patrick Collins, he would have been, you know, waiting in the wings there 4 or 5 years, learning off Anthony Nash all the time. I remember Darren Gleeson was the same with us, learning off Brendan Cummins, waiting to get his chance. When he got it in, he's an all-star goalkeeper almost straight away. As you mentioned there, you know, Sean O'Brien taking over from Billy Nolan. Like, did Billy Nolan do anything too wrong? He probably didn't, but obviously Sean O'Brien is burning it up. You know, is a top player for his club, De La Salle as well. So like the confidence they have in him, and I think the confidence he has in himself as well. You know, but as you said, we're coming into a new era of goalkeepers, Mike. You're dead right. We even had it in Tip this year. You know, Brian Hogan from Lura was our goalkeeper, all-star goalkeeper a couple of years ago. He got concussed twice this year, couldn't play a championship because of it. Barry Hogan from Kildangan steps in. You know, we all see what Barry did last year. Well, most people see literally had the ball in his hand against Lockmore, quick thinking, the ball goes out maybe too quick in some people's minds, and Kildangan get the breaks, and you know, they're the county champions for the first time in their history. So, like, you know, Barry Hogan, Sean O'Brien, Patrick Collins, you know, all these guys, you know, even Ian Murphy is relatively new guy, unfortunately couldn't play this year for COVID reasons. You know, like we are seeing a new era of goalkeepers, and I suppose we're seeing a new type of goalkeepers. Now, we're not going down the Rory Beggan route where they're going to be coming out around the 65, but I think Owen Murphy has transformed that as well, in my opinion, into this almost Manuel Neuer type role where he's very comfortable and the rest of them are very comfortable coming out 20, 30 yards as an extra player, getting the ball and pinging it down the field. And that's what you're seeing more and more nowadays, Mike, is that you're seeing more and more, even in the club, outfield guys becoming goalkeepers. Because why? Because managers are saying, look, he's a good sticks man, and you know, he'll have a bigger boss, he'll be able to shot stop it. And like, who has the ball in their hand the most every single match? The goalkeeper. You're talking 30, 35 puck-outs where he can do something efficient with it. So to have a guy that's a good sticks person, good striker of the ball, I think we're seeing more and more of guys who are maybe playing outfield with their club becoming inter-county goalkeepers, like, you know. So yeah, it is a new era of goalkeepers for sure, yeah, and a very exciting one as well. And it's just, I think the work they put in is phenomenal as well. I think Nicky Quaid, you know, we all hear the stories of him being a trainer 2.5 hours beforehand, just going through puck outs, pinging them, and the distance and the quality of the ball that they're delivering now, it's phenomenal to see, like, really.
Absolutely. And we'll see more with 4 really, really good goalkeepers. Obviously, 2 mentioned, Quaid and Murphy, this weekend. On this weekend, then Waterford. Like, we know what we're going to expect from Limerick, and we shouldn't, like, you wait a couple of weeks sometimes, you kind of forget what we saw in the second half of the Munster final. You're always thinking about the team you saw last. You sort of, I do anyway. So I can kind of forget sometimes about who they're playing. You know, and Limerick obviously phenomenal, but that's probably the best half they've played ever, but it's also miles ahead of everything else they've done this season, and we should remember that. They weren't great in the first half. They weren't incredible against Cork, maybe in bursts, and they had a really poor league. But Waterford also, like, they played each other in the Munster final, All-Ireland final last year. I wonder, do we know Limerick have a kind of a much more set style, much more set team? Waterford, you mentioned how they've changed it up even just this year alone. They found something that works, but there is that possibility of moving it again. A lot of players can play in a lot of positions for Waterford. I'm wondering if we'll see something a little bit unexpected from them this on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. I suppose I know you're getting your GA phrases there, but one of the best ones I've heard was you're talking about a match. You know, he said there's a match like this where it's so close. You know, Kilkenny Cork as well. He says there's like a deaf dog. It's hard to call. You know, so that you can add that one in. You know, but it's just hard to know. I think, you know, I was talking about Mike and Beavens earlier, and what they would have learned, again, maybe playing the All-Ireland final against Limerick last year up in Croke Park, and how Limerick are a different animal up in Croke Park, like, as well, and they use every inch of space that they can up there, and they're probably the best team at doing that, the way they suck the half-forward line out the field, and your half-back line have a choice to make. Do we go, do we stick, or will we follow? If you follow, they'll hit the space in front of Shamie Flanagan, Peter Casey, Aaron Gillan. If you stay, they'll let Garrod, Hegarty and Tom Morrissey take on the ball and shoot from distance. And that was very evident last year. I think in the semi-final and the final last year, Hegarty and Tom Morrissey scored something like, I think it was 22 points between them from play. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, there's 2 guys who love playing in Croke Park and know exactly where the posts are. So are we going to see something different from Waterford? Yeah, I think we definitely will see something. I think they're definitely going to be maybe much more attack-minded. And they're going to really go at this. Because why? Because it worked against Galway, it worked against Tipperary. Their game is high energy, their game is attacking, and they start that attack mostly from their half-back line. And even the way Shane Bennett took on that score against Galway the very first day, it was a message of intent to say, look, we're going at this. We're not sitting back. Like, so I think Waterford will go at it. They'll go at it hard. They'll be high energy. And, you know, when lads are spent, they now have a bench of the likes of Patrick Curran, you know, Neil Montgomery, Mikey Carney, Mikey Kiley, these guys to come in and inject more energy into the thing. Yeah. So I think they will go at it more maybe than what we've seen last year against them. And, you know, as we said, this is without so many top players like Tyg de Borca, Stephen O'Keefe. So we can't talk Tyg de Borca. He's gone now. We can't mention him. Stephen has walked away. But even Iarla Daly getting injured, like, you know, a lot of people forget that. Like, Iarla Daly is injured. So Shane Bennett is filling in the 6 role and is playing he's doing a great job at it. But it's the understanding at it. So I think, to answer your question, Mike, will we see something different? I think we'll see something different in regards that you'll see a more attacking-minded Waterford side than maybe what you would have seen in the All-Ireland final last year, where they were maybe weary of what was going on, whereas now they might trust themselves a bit more and say, let's go at this and let's see what Limerick's response will be to that. Like.
Yeah. Paul Tierney asking if you think Austin Gleeson will be in defence or attack. I think you probably answered that, is like you want your best lads in a more attacking situation if they're going to be going for it in that way. And there's a part of me that wonders, are Waterford better off meeting Limerick in this? I know it's such a cliche, but for Waterford especially, you're better off beating Limerick in a semi than a final, where there's so much baggage on the finals with them and everything else, and knowing what happened last year. And if Limerick can be caught, maybe it is, you know, the second last day rather than the last day.
Yeah, and if you even think about it, since Limerick produced that tour de force in the second half down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, like since that, Waterford have bet Galway, bet Waterford, bet Tipperary down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. Like momentum, you know, I don't think they'll be tired. I think because of the group and the age profile of the group, they're a relatively young group. They will recover much quicker than maybe maybe like a Tipperary team or something who are a bit older or like that. And you know, they'll be full of energy, they'll be buzzing. I suppose to answer Paul's question, where do I think Austin Gleeson will be playing? I feel that Waterford could play Austin Gleeson, give him a kind of a role, you know, around the half forward line where Tip made a bit of hay, like Jason Ford did in the first half. He's able to pick points from distance, and Austin has that in the locker that he can do that. Like, and they might try and pinpoint that to say, right, if Limerick do want to sit, that maybe we get Ozzy out around the ball, around the midfield, half forward area, and get him popping scores from distance and try and suck them out. And then what that allow us to do is maybe hit the space in front of Desi Hutchinson and let him with his pace with the space up in Croke Park try and take on, you know, whoever he'll be marking. It'll be very interesting. I think Sean Finn will probably be detailed to mark Desi Hutchinson. They would see him as a main target man and try and take him on and see, look, you know, how are you for pace? Like, you know, because he had a fantastic battle with Barrett the last day. Unbelievable. And I think Barrett and Sean Finn are in the same mould of a type of defender. Real tough, real tenacious, great touch. Will want to play in front. So just so many matchups. Even Jack Fagan, like, will he mark Kyle Hayes? Will he mark Declan Hannon? Will he mark Diarmuid Burns with his aerial ability and what he did in the semi-final against Kilkenny last year, snapping that ball and setting up the goal? So I think it'll be fascinating. I think who will mark Jamie Barron for Limerick? Like, will O'Donoghue get that leadership role of marking him, which he could do? Like, for me, I've often said about Will O'Donoghue, Mike, I think he's the right Keane of the team. He does everything very well, does the simple things very well. So he might be detailed to try and curtail Jamie Barron. And if he does, it will go a long, long way, you know, to try and get the victory for the Limerick lads. Like,
yeah. If like, I was just thinking of the two Tip goals in the first half the last day, and like I'm thinking of like the best scores Waterford got last weekend, where they've got such a brilliant ability to be just running off a man in possession, and be it through a scrap or through a pass, that they're there in full flight picking up the ball and bursting through. And you think that obviously happened deeper for the Tip goals against Limerick. I'm just wondering, is the current way Waterford are playing suits the possible very, very slight deficiencies in Limerick's defence, or is that just reaching?
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard. Like,
we'll know on Saturday.
It's just so hard because, like, we're here talking about Limerick, and we thought they were okay against Cork, won by 8 points. They hurled from 1-1 against Tip, and they're Munster champions. And like, are we going to see the complete performance from them? Like, are they waiting for Croke Park, you know, unknowns to themselves, to get back up to the business end of the season for this complete team performance, like what they did in the All-Ireland final last year? I mean, even what they did in what they've done for the last few years, to be fair to them, you know, they were a poor decision away from being in the final in 19, so 18, 19, 20. They like Croke Park and they play well in Croke Park, so maybe they're waiting for this complete team performance, you know, which maybe we just haven't seen from them for a 65 minute period at the weekend. So, like, to answer your question, are Waterford set up to try and take them on? I think Waterford are full of confidence at the moment, and they've great momentum behind them, and they will feel, and Mikey Beavens will feel as the coach, that they are set up. And like, will they do something a little bit different? Sure, they'll have to, you know, as the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. So there will have to be some kind of trick up the sleeve for the Waterford lads to take on Limerick and try and play a game where they get Limerick to change, rather than the way it is now, Mike, is everybody plays a game on Limerick's terms, and they have to change, try and suit them, like, you know. So
yeah, I think you explained it in the way I was trying to ask it arseways. But if Death Dog or not, call it.
I just think Limerick are awesome. I really, really do. And I just think if they click as a unit, and even if 11 or 12 of them play well, their bench will come on and finish the job. So for me, it's going to be Limerick, maybe by 4 or 5 points.
Yeah. You have to go with the team that are at their best could be unbeatable. You have to go for it, don't you? You have to think that it could be them on the day. But we're half an hour in here. We haven't even talked about Cork and Kilkenny. It's like, there's so much. I think there's probably less there. For me with Cork is like, we'll probably take more out of the Clare game than we will out of the Dublin game. No disrespect to Dublin. I think they did a good job. But one thing that they have found through the qualifiers or whatever they're called these days is probably cemented a little bit of trust in a lot of the players that Kingston probably brought through during the league, that, they scored a lot of goals and they played some exciting hurling and they were up and down, and you're just wondering, come championship time, will Jack O'Connor get real time? Will Barrett, all these guys, coming through, will even just positional changes like using Luke Meade the way they've been using him this year, that we might not have seen before. So even experienced guys, goalkeeper we mentioned already, I feel that there's a little bit more trust there now, and there's a kind of a sense of these guys this is the team we have, and we'll play to their strengths and we'll go out and give it everything,
Yeah, like it's just looking back through the results, like down through the years, like say Cork's last win was in 2013 in Thurles today, like over Kilkenny in the championship. If you remember that day, I think Henry got sent off that day actually.
Yeah.
And in the last time they played in Croke Park 2019 quarterfinal, Cork scored 319, but 310 came from Horgan. Now, I think Cork are so different since that, in that there isn't the same reliance on Pat Horgan, nowhere near the same reliance on Pat Horgan scoring wise, compared to what there was in 2019 when he scored 310 and that unbelievable goal off his knees. Like, Cork don't need Pat Horgan to score 310 now. They just need him to, tipping in a few points. He takes watching no matter what he does. Even the score he got against the last day, great image of it there, off the knees as well. He's just one of those players that, it's like, knowing Father Ted, where he tells Dougal go out and mind the corner flag. Like, if Pat Horgan goes out to mind the corner flag, he still takes watching, and someone has to go over and stand beside him. That's the type of player he is. That's the genius of a hurler that he is. And I thought he was brilliant the last day, So, but they're not dependent on him, like, And the other thing for me is the character they've shown in the last two games for me. Like, I was in at the game against Clare. Clare came back at him, went to point up Diarmuid Ryan. Cork's response was to score the next 1-5 in the game.
Yeah.
Outscored Clare 1-5 to a point. Now, obviously, coming into stoppage time, Tony gets a penalty. But if that was Cork teams of before, like, they might have just fell apart and say, oh, this is us now, we're out again, And their response was brilliant. The last day against Dublin clipped off 4 points in a row, was starting to bring it back in. The next 4 scores after that, then Cork get them. And they just kill off the game as a contest. So what I'm trying to say here is Cork, we're seeing a character in the Cork team that maybe we haven't seen, and we're seeing a work rate and a hunger, and like it's typified like by Tim O'Mahony, the way he's been a real tenacious defender, the way he's going forward, the goal he got against the last day. I thought he was brilliant against Limerick even. I thought he did a great job marking Tom Morrissey that day, and was sending out a message, was giving a few dunce, and it was saying, look, we're not the soft touch you think you are. I think Downey at 3 has been phenomenal. I think, their 2 cornerbacks, especially Sean O'Donoghue, who has been immense, like marked 3 guys against Clare, was brilliant the last day against Dublin as well, and did everything right. So there's that tightness and that bit of steel in the Cork defence that we maybe haven't seen before. Luke Meade is doing a lot of work midfield, allowing Fitzgibbon to get up and down more. But up front, there isn't that reliance on Horgan, and I think that's massive for him. But all being said, Cody's record in semi-finals is looking at it. I think this is his 21st. He's only lost 3. Lost to Galway in 01, Galway 05, and lost to Waterford last year. Cody knows how to win semi-finals, and as we were talking, Mike, beforehand, nobody's giving him any credit for being an All-Ireland semi-final. They're giant league champions. They're Leinster champions, defeated Wexford after extra time, defeated Dublin in the Leinster final. They're probably wondering, what do we have to do before we get a bit of credit here? But I think that suits this group and Cody down to the ground. They're coming in it. I'm sure the group is buzzing as well. And lads that, even like, look at James Maher, not really a household name. Phenomenal the last day on Danny Sutcliffe, I thought, in the Leinster final. And the bench as well. Like, they're probably finishing the games with stronger than what they're starting them because of the bench they have. So, and I think it's 2004 is the last time Kilkenny lost to Cork in Croke Park. So look, I'm sure all these things will be mentioned going around heads and everything, but it's just going to be real interesting tie. Like, for me, Mike, I just feel Kilkenny they're just so good at semi-final stage. Cody is so good at them. As I said, 21, only lost 3 of them. And I think there's a great group there and a great panel there. And I know it's even enough, with the bookies wise, I know you're talking about that, but for me, I do give Kilkenny the edge in this, like, I really do,
like. I think you're right about them not getting enough credit. I also don't think maybe we're talking about them enough in general. I don't mean those specifically, but he's built another team there, kind of like quietly. If you think that Conor Fogarty, Killian Buckley, Walter Walsh, you're saying that maybe they're the strongest players coming up, but they're all coming off the bench, and the guys who are starting for them, they've kind of quite like everybody. Just if you're looking from afar, you're still thinking, TJ Reid and. 1 or 2 more there, and there's lads coming through like Mullen maybe or something like that. But if you think of Donnelly, if you think of Cody, that there's a serious forward line there. That's right. They haven't done it yet, but you're thinking talent wise and potential wise, that's up there with the forward line of the team of 10, 15 years ago. Obviously it's a big step between potential and actually getting the job done. And then in the backs, I feel like it's the same thing. And you think of the form of somebody like, Hugh Lawler, Paddy Deegan, these guys have been there for a while. Owen Murphy's probably the best goalkeeper in the country. But there's guys there, I just think, that are just like, there isn't really weak links in the Kilkenny team. I think for the last 5-6 years, or well, maybe it's a bit less than that, they've won an All-Ireland in that time. But at the same time, you're trying to think like, this isn't what they were because they're carrying maybe 1 or 2. I feel like at this stage now, there's 20 guys who are going to make a difference. Are going to like step up to the mark. They can afford 1 or 2 non-performances because they're all good enough.
Yeah. How could I make a comparison for you, so Mike, right? 10, 15 years ago, right? And you step onto the field and you look at the Kilkenny forward line, and it's Eddie Brennan, Henry Shefflin, Owen Larkin, Richie Power, Taggy Fogarty. I'm leaving out some greats there now, like, right? Okay. So they probably had you bet before the ball was thrown in. Whereas nowadays people feel they're stepping onto a field and they look around and go, right, Mossy Keohane, right? He doesn't have too many All-Stars. Donnelly, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen. Okay, obviously TJ is going to take mine. And next thing, they just blow you out of the water. Like, the comparison is that years ago, Mike, there might have been a massive fear factor because of who you were playing against. Mick Fennelly midfield, Tommy Welsh, JJ Delaney, Brian Hogan, Jackie Tyrrell. How do you break these lads down? Whereas now teams are going in and going, hold on a second, these are only young lads. Some of them, James Maher, don't know much about him. Blanchfield, don't know much about him. Hugh Lawler, don't know too much about him. And next thing, Kilkenny, they're going out and they're winning consistently, like in the league, in the championship. So for me, that's where we go back to maybe the credit thing, or maybe there's not the same fear factor, but teams are finding out after 10 or 15 minutes, this is a serious group, lads. We have to give these lads a bit more respect, like, and they are gaining that respect. But I suppose the respect that the group, that the generation, the greatest hurling team of all time, in my opinion, had, they were getting it before the ball is turned in. Whereas now it's taking teams maybe 20, 25 minutes to realise, geez, lads, Owen Cody can win his own ball. Adrian Mullen can win his own ball. Mossy Keohane can win ball. John Donnelly can win ball. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's nearly too late then. Like, but I think they are gaining that respect, like, to get to the level of their predecessors, like 10 years ago. I suppose the only way they will get there, I suppose, is by lifting Lee McCarthy a few times. But I think as a group, Mike, I think they're a serious group. I think the Hugh Lawler one specifically, thought he was immense in the Leinster final. The question for me was, would he have been as instrumental maybe if Ronan Hayes could play the game, because of the type of player Ronan Hayes is. And I think there's a big test coming for him now this weekend. And will he be detailed to Mark Patrick Horgan? Will he be detailed maybe to Mark Shane Kingston? It'd be interesting to see the kind of challenge that's going to come at him at the weekend and how he'll handle that and elevate his status to one of the top fullbacks in the country even further. Like,
yeah, and that's what Cork have is a kind of an options that maybe Kilkenny haven't faced yet in the forwards. There's the question here from Paul as to who will mark Jack O'Connor. That he's a joy to watch him and might expose weak links in the Kilkenny defence. And that's, you think of Kingston, you think of O'Connor, you think of Horgan, all different matchups for the full back line to worry about. And Wexford probably have that talent-wise, but we're probably playing Rory O'Connor inside in his own for most of that match. And look, they absolutely caused Kilkenny problems. And then Dublin were, they were just so impotent by the fact of everything that happened before the match. There is, as we've talked about Cork and what they have in their attack, but it is a variation as well that could kind of cause Kilkenny some problems.
Yeah, I think the Jack O'Connor one is very interesting, because Jack O'Connor is the type of player that You know, to look at him, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's picked up 3 yellow cards in the last 2 games, you know, and he's well able to mind himself, and he's well able to give it out if he has to, which goes away from the traditional corner forward maybe we're used to seeing, small, nippy, Shawnee McGrath, Joe Dean type of guy. That Jack O'Connor is the kind of guy to say, lads, get the ball into me, I don't mind. And his first choice is always, I want a goal. I want to goal, I want to goal, I want to goal. And he's going head down. Now, if the point is the best thing to do, he'll take it. But the first thing he wants to do is get it in his hand and go. So I think maybe Kilkenny are looking at that to say, right, who do we have pedals-wise here to keep up with him? And for me, I thought that maybe someone like James Maher, with the job he did and Danny Sutcliffe following him around, you know, athletic ability-wise, he could be a guy that they might look to say, look, there's going to be a bit of space in front of you, but we have the confidence in you to do it. Or you're going to go out, you're going to win the ball, and maybe that'll allow Pádraig Welch up to do a bit more hurling and a bit more, you know, distribution of the ball. But, you know, I think Jack O'Connor has been just revelation there for him. We all knew what he was doing with Sarsfields there the last few years, underage for Cork as well. But he's really, really stepped up this year, and just the way he even rounded Rory Hayes, even, you know, like Rory Hayes, one of the top cornerbacks in the country, just rounded him, left him for dead, off the hurley, bang, top of the net. Next ball he got, put a tap over the bar, no, I want another goal. So that'll be very interesting to see who picks him up, and maybe it will be a James Maher type figure, because I feel maybe Paddy Deegan is more of that raw type defender, but he mightn't have the pedals for Jack O'Connor in the space that is Croke Park. So it'll be very interesting to see what way Cork play it. Will they leave him inside and try and you know, isolate him with one of the Kilkenny guys, and who Cody will detail to pick him up as well. So look, the matchups around the field will be absolutely fascinating as well. And just the Kilkenny midfield, Mike, I know we're running out of time probably.
No, you're fine. Take your time. We're not on the clock.
I'm looking at the Kilkenny midfield. There are 2 midfielders have been taken off. Both midfielders taken off for the last 2 games. Their midfield has never started and finished the game. Now, maybe midfielders can't do that, but I'm looking at Darragh Fitzgibbon and Luke Meade, who are starting and finishing all the games for Cork. They have a great partnership. So that's an area of the field that Cork could look to you know, to make hay from as well, with Fitzgibbon maybe chipping in with 2 or 3 points for play, which he does like. Yeah,
Jack Nolte saying 50-50. I fancy Kilkenny's physicality might attitude might wear Cork down 2 or 3 points, but Cork have the talent, no doubt. On the Meade and Fitzgibbon finishing every game midfield, it brings up a point. We talked all the way through the qualifiers how difficult the route it is this year with the condensed championship, playing every single week. There's a momentum there for sure, absolutely, but we've seen it that, you know, Clare fell on the 3rd week. Waterford are you know, they're going for 4 weeks now. But I suppose I don't mean to be disparaging to Laois. It's still a championship game, and they still gave it everything. But I thought they were tired at the end of the game, but it still wasn't quite the top level, I suppose, in the way that Cork have come through both the Clare match and the Dublin match. And I just wonder, is that this week with Limerick and Kilkenny having very, very normal schedule as opposed to every other team who've been just like flat out, how much that's going to come into things?
Yeah, I suppose, look, freshness, yeah, I suppose it will. Like I thought Cork won the match pulling up against Dublin the last day. I don't think they would have suspended anywhere as much energy as they had to try and get the Clare result out of the way. So I think that they'll be fine going into it. I think Waterford, you know, might be a bit more lagged, but as I said already, I think they're so the age profile of the team, of the group. I think that they'll be buzzing for it. I don't think it will be an issue with them. I think that they have it in the legs, that they would have recovered very, very well. And recovery was the main word that Liam Cahill used after the Tip game, is we have to recover. And that's, I'd say they hardly even pucked the ball this week. They might do a sharp session maybe tonight or tomorrow night, Mike, in preparation for Saturday. But like, I suppose you imagine what was going on in A versus B in Limerick and into the Kilkenny camps the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We're talking about panels. I'd say they're absolutely hopping off each other. Like, I mean, you look at like David Reedy, Cathal O'Neill, these kinds of guys in Limerick, Pat Ryan, I'm sure they're saying, like, what do we have to do to get on the team here? And then you're looking like, well, the guy that's keeping you out is Peter Casey, who scored 5 points from play the last day. So let's see what you've got. Here's your point. Here's your chance to prove. The Kilkenny A versus B games are legendary at this stage. Like, I'm sure Wally Walsh is there wondering, geez, Brian, what do I have to do here? Like, I'm one of your tried and trusted down through the years, but I'm sure he's saying, look, I want to finish the game with my best team. But look, if you're going well enough, we've seen Cody reward players year in, year out who are going well in training. So, you can't get the same buzz or the same feel as championship action, but I'm sure Limerick Kilkenny are trying to have as close as they can internally in A versus B the last few weeks. So look, I think I think Waterford will be fine, and I do honestly feel that Cork won the match pulling up against Dublin, that energy wise they'll be fine as well for the weekend. Like,
I want to stop you on the A versus B games though, because I'm sure you've been there. You've gone through the Munster route and you've waited around for the semi-final. It used to be worse than it is now. Kilkenny well used to it, and Limerick are kind of getting there as well. And like, I think it's about kind of like, you'll be there at the end of the game if you're still in it, because you'll have the fresher legs. But it's about starting at that full intensity when a team has been going through it. But how much are they? You can't recreate championship, but also you don't want to go out and kill each other and put like, a full, you don't want to put too much out of your legs either. Like, you want to use your break for you. I'm fascinated by those A versus B games. You talk about them being legendary, but I kind of feel like nobody actually, they are quite literally legendary. We don't really know anything about them.
No.
Are they full on matches? Are they like, is it score kept? How does it work?
Yeah. Most of the top team, the top teams, Mike, would take them very, very serious. From my own personal experience and from talking to other guys from other counties, how serious is it taken? Well, it'll be behind closed doors anyway. First of all, it might be, say, in Tipperary's case, in Simple Stadium. In Cork's case, might be down at Park Equive. Kenny's place is obviously Nolan Park, Limerick Gaelic grounds. Closed doors, nobody's in there watching. The top managers who are always on about the 1%ers, they'll try and replicate everything, before the game. Like, say if it's an All-Ireland final, you might see teams actually doing the parade beforehand. It might be lining up Mariette to meet the president. You hear of all these things so that you're making it more familiar and more familiar. Some groups might try and recreate the noise of Croke Park as well through PA systems. And, this goes on in other sports as well. And you see the top managers and the top coaches trying to do all these 1%ers. And the game itself then is ref properly. There'd probably be umpires at the game. The ref would probably be, a top inter-county referee, or, a top inter-county referee from your own county. And it's done to the T, The water breaks will come into it. There'll be exactly a minute. They'll come out. The puckouts won't be allowed to be taken too quickly. So I think it's a test. It's a sign of how good the group is in the A versus B games, that a lot of the time, if the group is really ticking and really pouring, you'll find that the Bs are nearly beating the A team. And I think that's a sign of teams. Manager wants to start with one team, but probably wants to finish with his best team. And Jim Gavin always used that terminology, didn't he, of starters and finishers. No subs anymore. Starters and finishers. And I think that's what you have nowadays with top inter-county panels, hurling, football, ladies football, camogie, that you will see more often than not, the best team will actually finish the game rather than start the game. The starting team will do a job, 45, 46 minutes. Right, let's get the guys on who are absolutely lifting inside and training, who are pushing these guys to the max to be as good as they can. And I see it there a lot, that a really good group will have their B team pushing their A team all the way week in, week out. And that's, as John Kiley says it as well, as all the top managers say, the reason they're so good is because of the guys who weren't even hardly able to tog out today. And that's what makes a great group. Like.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. For some reason, I always just assume, even when you're reading it in autobiographies and all, I'm still thinking of it as just like end the train and old school kind of line up here, lads, and we'll play 15 minutes, and the manager throws it in the middle himself. I think that might be a bit a bit dated.
No, absolutely not. No, and lads are absolutely hopping off each other. But as I said, a good sign of a group as well. It's left on the pitch. Lads will do what they have for the group, but that's it. When the game is over, that's it. There's no bad feelings carried over the white lines.
So if we were to, when we talk at 12 o'clock on Monday on the show, you're thinking that we're probably looking at a Limerick Kilkenny final. If you were to call the death dog.
If it's a hard one to call, like the death dog. Yeah, look, I would personally. I feel Limerick Kilkenny double hasn't been going great now with the tips at the front.
Waterford and Cork will be delighted.
I have more losses than wins, with lads at the moment. So look, I just feel Limerick are coming in a good place. I haven't seen the full team performance from them yet for 60, 65 minutes. I think it's coming in Croke Park. And I think Kilkenny, serious group, they know how to win semi-finals. This group knows how to win semi-finals. Fascinating to see what TJ is going to do. Will he be in the half-forward line, or will Brian Cody say, in and top of Downey, let's see what he's made of? And will Sean O'Donoghue pick up Owen Cody as well? Looking forward to that one so much. So but I just feel Kilkenny are just going about edge it. So Limerick Kilkenny double. Maybe everyone should back Waterford Cork double. That's the case. So look, yeah, that's what I'm thinking for the weekend, Mike.
Lovely. Well, listen, it's Waterford and Limerick on Saturday at 5 o'clock, Croke Park. You'll be there on RT radio commentary. And then on Sunday, we've got Cork and Kilkenny, the old firm, the classic lineup, 3:30 on Sunday. So can't wait for that. Fascinating insight as always, Shane McGrath. We'll talk to you Monday. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Mike. Thanks a million.